Dollar Tree dresser plus popsicle sticks equals apothecary cabinet. I'm Shira, welcome back to Queen City Minis. Today I'm fixing up this dresser. It cost $1 and you kind of get what you pay for. The top is crooked and the center knob is off center. I want to make this a whole lot better, but first I need to destroy it. In order to take this apart, I popped it into my microwave for about 10 seconds at a time. I keep turning it so it doesn't light on fire. The microwave softens the glue so I can pull the item apart. In this case, the glue is pretty stubborn, so I had to use my X-Acto knife to cut it apart. I've also used my heat gun to soften the glue, and you can use acetone as well. Once the dresser is topless and bottomless, I use some pliers to remove the knobs. As usual, I only had a vague plan, but I knew for sure I wanted to fill all the holes in the dresser ridges on the front of this to make the face of my dresser flat. I chose to use spackle to flatten the front of my dresser, but you could also use a paper product like cereal box or cardstock and just glue it to the front. I just want to take a moment to thank everyone for your likes and your comments. The comments are my absolute favorite thing. I'm always refreshing to see if there's something I can respond to, so thank you very much for that. Now this dresser will get a coating of half yellow ochre and half raw umber paint. This base coat is actually the first step of a painting process that gives miniatures an antique finish. While that dries, I'd like to transform the look of the trim piece that goes across the front of the dresser. These scalloped edges don't work for the look I'm going for, which I decided at this point will be an antique apothecary cabinet. Here I'm reassembling the base. I need to come up with terminology for this technique, but I combine wood glue and hot glue so the glue will hold now and later. I reinforce the corners with some blocks and plop the dresser onto its new base. If you're wondering why I didn't assemble it before painting, it's because I forgot. Now is the time to transform from brown dresser to apothecary cabinet. My plan is to make multiple rows of drawers, so I'm flipping my stick along to get an idea of how many drawers I need going across and up and down. Since I want square drawers, I'm marking these at the same width of the stick and cutting them out. I used my easy cutter to cut them and I made 35 and it took 11 minutes. Then I sanded all of the edges to make them beveled. I'll put these aside to use all of them later. It's high time I get back to this painting technique. Step 2 consists of covering the entire base coat with a top coat. At this point you can take a Q-tip and expose some of the undercoat while the paint is still wet, and if you don't like the way it looks, you can just paint right over it. My plan was to cover the entire dresser with tiny drawers, so I looked on Google for some ideas for hardware. Then this little beauty caught my eye. I love how this cabinet looks, and it made me realize I need to change my design and vary the size and shape of my drawers to add interest. So off with my tiny drawers that took 41 minutes to make. They're off to live in the bit box. Bye guys. I was still feeling the sting of all that wasted time when I decided to make a simple pattern to plan the layout of the drawers for my dresser. The top will stay the same with the 3 rows of drawers that are each the width of a popsicle stick. There will be 3 drawers across the middle, 3 vertical drawers, and 3 horizontal drawers on the right. The center drawers are made up of a 5/8 inch wide popsicle stick. If you only have regular size popsicle sticks, you can glue 2 of them together and cut them to size. The vertical and horizontal drawers are standard popsicle sticks cut at 1 1/4 and 1 inch wide. These perfect looking drawers don't fit well on an antique apothecary cabinet, so I used various tools to age them. I pinched them with pliers, poked them with a needle, and dented them with my 1-2-3 block. This was actually a lot of fun. I want these drawers to look really weathered and old, so I'm using a multi-part paint process. First, I stained them with watered down acrylic paint. Then I used a dry brushing technique to apply some ivory paint. I built up the ivory color more and more, still retaining the darkness and all of the aging I did with my tools. Next, I added color to the ivory paint using some chalk pastels. I'll create another video going into more detail about the paint processes. If you like this vibrant look, you can keep it, but I wanted it to look more subdued, so I went over it with an ivory dry brushing. The hardware for the upper drawers is really simple. I just used my cutters to cut the head off of a sewing pin, used a hand drill to make a hole, and dropped the pin in with some glue. Then I repeated the process 14 more times. I had to be a little more creative for the rest of the hardware. I want to create some cup pulls, so I started by smushing a little bit of polymer clay to take the shape of the end of a popsicle stick. I cut the little coffee bean in half, and it could be called done right there, but I want to add another detail. First, I baked my handle so it'll keep its shape. Then I rolled a snake of clay and attached it with some liquid clay to my handle. I used my Dollar Tree ball stylus to smooth the transition between the snake of clay and the handle. I trimmed the edges with my X-Acto knife and baked it one more time. In order to avoid turning on the oven for small projects like this, I actually bake them in a silicone cup with a heat gun for just a minute or so. To create the nameplates, I'm using a piece of cardstock. When you're cutting tiny details like this, it's a lot easier to cut the inside first and then cut the entire shape out. I used more amazing mold putty to make another mold. Once the mold putty has set, I fill each of my molds with liquid clay and bake them with my heat gun. I like using liquid clay for things like this because it gets into every nook and cranny and the end result is flexible. It only takes a minute to bake these with the heat gun, and then I pop them out of the mold and arrange them for painting. For a rustic bronze look, I gave them a brown base coat and dry brushed them with gold. I glued the nameplates to a piece of paper using matte Mod Podge. Then I drew little letters inside and added dimensional Mod Podge for some shine. You can make a much simpler apothecary cabinet, but I love these tiny details. Now it's time to add the drawers to the dresser so our hardware has somewhere to live. To start, I added the drawers across the top, and then I added the 2 drawers underneath the middle drawer to keep everything centered. Here's a really easy way to fake the look of functioning drawers. All I did was chop up some coffee stir sticks and create 3 sides like it's a drawer and glue them to the face of the dresser. I think this one simple technique adds so much interest to this little cabinet. Once I started adding the hardware, I really fell in love with this Dollar Tree dresser. I'm thinking of creating a room box or a shadow box around it. Maybe something Harry Potter related like Newt Scamander's workspace. I don't know, tell me what you guys think. I finished it off with some more dry brushing of chalk pastels. I also printed out some antique paperwork from Etsy and tucked it into the drawers. I am so happy with how this turned out. I wasn't sure what I was going to do with this cheap dresser when it started, and I absolutely love the outcome. Let me know what you think of it, and as always, thank you for watching.